Hello, my name is Sarah Summar. I am on the faculty at the Center for Musical Arts in Lafayette, Colorado, and I'm making this video to give you an introduction to the program to be featured on the Colorado Music Festival's performances set for the evenings of July 11th and 12th in Chautauqua Auditorium. In this program, the festival orchestra will be performing works by John Adams, Sergei Prokofiev, and Igor Stravinsky. Myself being both a composer and violinist, I'm especially excited for this program because it features three truly exhilarating 20th century works for orchestra. Not only will Peter Ungin be leading the festival orchestra through this wonderful program, but the orchestra will also be joined by Ukrainian-born Israeli violinist Vadim Gluzman. The first work on the program is a short ride in a fast machine, written by John Adams in 1986. This was composed to be a fanfare to open a music festival. And one thing I love about it is the title. I love to think about music as a metaphor for real life experiences. Music does this so well because we experience life over time, and music happens over time. So Short Ride in a Fast Machine is a brilliant example of how music can do this. And it is, in fact, inspired by a real experience that John Adams had after being talked into riding in an Italian race car owned by one of his friends. His description of that experience is that it was terrifying. And then it was over and he was relieved. So what I think that you can hear of that experience is there is a steady pulse all the way through, which you can hear performed through by the wood block right at the start. And it does not slow down for anything. Rather than just being an introductory gesture, this continues to the point that we almost forget that it's there. And amidst flourishes in the woodwinds and chords accented in a syncopated manner, that beat persists until we're almost to the end of the work, and then the wood block finally drops out. For me, I can liken this to that point in, say, a really stressful experience like a short ride in a fast machine, where you're white knuckling it until your body is just so tired of being in that intense state. There's almost a sense of calm that comes over you once you've sort of adapted to the situation. Anyway, that's my experience of the work. And I want to point out that we do hear elements in common with Stravinsky's Rite of Spring that is later in the program, particularly those that reflect the influence of jazz, like the importance of rhythmic interest as opposed to long lyrical lines, and syncopated accents, and extended tertian harmonies, big, thick chords that exist for their own sakes rather than to support a melodic theme. Now, the next work on the program is Prokofiev's Violin Concerto No. 2 in G minor. All right. Prokofiev was born in Sonsivka, Ukraine in 1891, and he studied at St. Petersburg Conservatory with great names of the 19th century Russian music, such as Glier and Rimsky-Korsakov. In his early career, Prokofiev was celebrated as an accomplished pianist slash composer, often performing his own works. During this period, the composer fully embraced the newly emerging modernist aesthetic um, that was taking hold, not just in Europe, but in the United States as well. But this is only where Prokofiev's artistic journey began. In 1918, just 1 year after the start of the Russian Civil War, he left Russia for New York, where he would spend the next 5 years. In 1922, he embraced his love of opera and composed The Love for Three Oranges, which premiered in Chicago. Soon after that, he made the move to Paris and stayed there until 1936. It was in 1935, just before returning to Russia, that the Second Violin Concerto was composed. By this time, Prokofiev had begun to embrace what he called a new simplicity, a style of composition meant to resonate with a wider audience. In fact, it is no coincidence that he returned to Russia shortly after developing this new approach. He believed that his newly adopted style would align with the principles of Soviet realism, allowing him to make a living creating music for a Soviet public with minimal interference from government regulators and critics. When I listen to the Second Violin Concerto, there are two things I like to keep in mind that go beyond stylistic tendencies. The first is that Sergei Prokofiev was himself a virtuoso pianist who had previously written and performed 3 piano concertos. So he understood very well not just the concerto as a compositional form, but also as a musical journey for the soloist and orchestra. This is a piece that violinists and orchestras love to play and to hear. It takes full advantage of both the violin's capacity for beautiful lyrical themes, as well as its agility, wide range, and its capacity for great expressive contrasts. Secondly, I love to keep in mind when listening to Prokofiev's work that throughout his career, he very effectively wrote for stage and for screen. As I listen to the aforementioned themes of the Allegro Moderato, I can easily picture the long, strong lines of a deeply expressive Maria Tallchief, first suggesting a weighty inner turmoil and later wistful hope. And the Andante Assai features a rhythmic structure that allows the soloist and orchestra to be at odds with one another and in alignment at once somehow, creating a both dramatic tension and a sense of transcendence. This is a great example of how Prokofiev weds his classical understanding of phrasing with modernist compositional techniques and rhythmic concepts. Perhaps another talent gained from his experience in composing for theatrical settings is Prokofiev's ability to musically convey a sense of character. I feel this is most evident in the third movement, the Allegro ben marcato of this concerto. The title of this movement not only suggests a particular mood, but tells the soloist precisely how to articulate the bold, brash themes of this movement with short, marked, percussive bow strokes. I imagine the violin in this movement to be the voice of the sort of character who cannot help but draw attention to themselves wherever they go. And now the Rite of Spring. Since the day it premiered in Paris in 1913, much has been said about the ballet, The Rite of Spring, choreographed by Vaslav Nijinsky with music composed by Igor Stravinsky. The ballet was commissioned by Diaghilev, along with the very well-received Firebird of 1910 and Petrushka of 1911. But it was only The Rite of Spring that famously sparked a riot at its premiere in Paris. There were a lot of contributing factors that led to the ballet's scandalous reception. But my personal suspicion is that it had more to do with the choreography and the subject matter of pagan ritual practice in early Russia than it did with Stravinsky's music. However, the music would have been very challenging and very new. But we do know the music to have been presented successfully in a concert setting, such as this, just a few years following the premiere. What I think is most remarkable about the Rite of Spring is that the music has now inspired and informed a century's worth of significant composers, conductors, and musicians, and it remains relevant and instructive today. Rather than giving you an overview of such a richly complex work, I would like to simply suggest that you focus your attention on these three musical elements: tone color, texture, and rhythm. So about the tone color, use of tone color and timbre. I'd like to share an anecdote about the first time I heard The Rite of Spring live. I was 16 years old and seated with my family in the very front row of the concert hall. Being unable to see past the first row of string players on stage actually turned out to be a real enhancement of my listening experience. Even though I was very familiar with the sounds of the standard symphony orchestra, by that point, it felt as though I was hearing this grand instrument for the first time. The piece opens with a Slavic folk melody hauntingly performed in the soprano range of the bassoon. The extremes of the instrumental ranges are used throughout the piece to similar effect. When expertly performed, there is an archaic beauty to the uppermost tessitura of the reed instruments, an urgent shrillness to the flutes and brass, and the very low ranges of the string choir, articulated in short, dry bow strokes with unpredictably shifting accents, is also used throughout the work, functioning more like a massive rumbling percussion instrument than a traditional string section. Now, about texture. In music, the term texture refers to how the different layers of sound combine and interact for an overall effect. One of the benefits of exploiting the unique timbral capabilities of each instrument is that it allows Stravinsky to weave together a complex tapestry of contrasting colors and textures. This makes it possible for the ear to take in multiple melodic motifs at once. There are moments that we hear complete sudden changes in instrumentation. These dramatic shifts in tone color palettes create a sort of large-scale structure that holds the work together like a great collage or quilt of sound. Now, we cannot talk about texture in The Rite of Spring without acknowledging the role that rhythm plays. There are moments, such as in the Augurs of Spring, where the sounding instruments all work in concert to rattle the listener with herky-jerky roller coaster ride of shifting accents. There are also moments where rhythmically misaligned melodic motives are repeated simplistically, but then stacked on top of each other to create something that is very complex and interesting without overwhelming the ear with excessive harmonic or melodic development. I absolutely love this piece, not just for the startling and visceral first impression that it makes, but also for the incredible attention to detail that allows us to notice something new with every hearing. I hope that you are as excited about this upcoming performance as I am, and I hope to see you there. Just to summarize, remember that in Short Ride in a Fast Machine by John Adams, notice that effect of the woodblock stopping long after you've gotten accustomed to it. And in the Prokofiev, listen for different characters, heroes, heroines. How are they moving on the stage in your mind? Notice how themes hold the work together and the relationship between the orchestra and soloist. And then lastly, enjoy Stravinsky's Rite of Spring and its wide array of colors, textures, and rhythmic patterns. Thank you for listening. Enjoy the concert.